Welcome to ASEAN Peoples Speak Season 2. I am Regine Jessica Abuel, your host for this podcast. For today's episode, we will be joined by a special guest from the Philippines Department of Foreign Affairs, who will share his learnings and knowledge about the process of lobbying for human rights visibility in the ASEAN Charter and its impact on the ASEAN region today. Our guest for today is currently the Philippine High-Level Representative to the High-Level Task Force on ASEAN Communities Post-2025 Vision. He worked at the Department of Foreign Affairs, Philippines for 32 years until his retirement in November 2015. He was tapped again by the Department of Foreign Affairs to work as the Philippine High-Level Representative today. He was the Philippine ambassador to the Republic of Korea from 2008 to 2014, while his previous foreign assignments included London, Beijing, Guangzhou, and Kuala Lumpur. He also served as director of the China Division of the Office of Asian and Pacific Affairs from 1993 to 1995, and as a special assistant to the Undersecretary for Policy from 1995 to 1997. He was also the Philippine Deputy Representative to the High-Level Task Force, which drafted the ASEAN Charter from 2006 to 2007. He served twice as the Assistant Secretary of the Office of ASEAN Affairs from 2006 to 2008 and 2014 to 2015. He also headed the office when the Philippines was chair of the ASEAN in 2007. In August 2007, he received the Lakandula Award from the Office of the President and Gawad Mabini from the Department of Foreign Affairs for his outstanding work during the Philippine chairmanship of ASEAN. He graduated from San Carlos Major Seminary with a degree of Bachelor of Arts, major in Philosophy. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome our guest for today's episode, His Excellency Ambassador Luis T. Cruz. Hello,
Hi,
Ambassador.
good day to you, Reg, and to all those who are watching this podcast. And thank you for having me.
Thank you also for your time, Ambassador Louis. It's very nice to see you, and I hope you're having a good day as well. And we're glad that you are here to share with us your experiences and your learnings when it comes to the beginnings of the ASEAN Charter. To start off, Ambassador, I'd like to ask you, as part of the high-level task force that drafted the ASEAN Charter, can you please share with us what is your role or the experiences that you have had during the drafting proper?
Okay, so the series of meetings, about 13 meetings in all in different capitals of ASEAN, including the Philippines, plus the one in Brussels, because the high-level task force also consulted with their counterpart in Brussels. No? So those the structure of the meetings was that prior to the HLTF that put the meat into the structure, there was this group that was established earlier by the leaders, no, and this is the eminent persons group. Our representative there is the late President Ramos. So essentially, that group, the eminent persons group, before that was 2005, they drafted the framework. And then after that, the HLTF was created to put flesh or to put meat into the structure that was prepared by the eminent persons group. So during those 13 meetings, they tackled what are the provisions that should go into the articles, the various articles, including that one on human rights, taking into consideration the aspirations of the ASEAN peoples and the building of the ASEAN community.
Mhm.
So we were divided in. So every member country has a delegation, and during the meetings, we were divided into two groups. There is
Mhm.
a plenary session, and there is this working group. The Philippines chaired the first seven meetings, and then Singapore followed suit after that. The reason for this is that uh, the Philippines was chair of ASEAN when the HLTF started meeting, but the chairmanship of the Philippines ended. Chairmanship for ASEAN
Mm.
ended midway the work of the HLTF. So Singapore took over from the Philippines, no,
Mm.
the
Mhm.
chairmanship. Now, as chair of the HLTF, Ambassador Rosario Manalo was chairing the meeting and also representing the Philippine panel,
Mhm.
while I chair the group of assistants meeting. The
Mm.
meeting of the working groups. We we prepare the drafts to be discussed by the eminent persons. But
Mhm.
if we get stuck in some provisions, we put them in brackets and submit them to the plenary for
Mm.
consideration of the working group. We
So
also
in
do
a
the
way,
legal drafting.
Ambassador, you were sorry, Ambassador,
Right.
you were in a way the support group of. There were two groups, and you were the support group. You
That's
headed the
correct.
support group. Okay,
Yes,
okay.
yes, that's correct. Of course, after the ASEAN chairmanship of the Philippines, I also turned over my chairmanship of the working group to Singapore.
Singapore.
Yes,
Ah, okay.
that's right.
Okay, when you were starting the charter, Ambassador, was it very difficult? Would like to know what were the key challenges in the inclusion of the articles that you mentioned. Well, to give some context also, we want to focus on Article 14, which is the ASEAN human rights body. Um, were there any significant events that happened during that time that needed to be overcome? And how did the high level task force reach a consensus so that that article may be included?
Okay, before I go into that, I'd like to say that personally, those times were extremely difficult for me
Mm.
because
Mhm.
I was also the or the assistant secretary for ASEAN Affairs at the
Mhm.
Department of Foreign Affairs. And as such, my office was responsible for arranging all the meetings of ASEAN. And during
Mm.
that period, 2006 to 2007, about 12, 13 months, uh, uh, it, my office arranged about 106
Wow.
meetings. Huh?
That's a lot of meetings.
106 meetings in the
Mhm.
Philippines. But on
Mm.
top of that, there were other meetings that I attended in other countries because my role as the assistant secretary also involved attending meetings of the ASEAN Standing Committee.
Mhm.
That's the committee that thus the shall we say decide on the day-to-day activities on ASEAN.
Mm.
And then the dialogue partners. So if there are 10 of them, meaning we had 10 meetings
10
also
meetings.
with
Each one
dialogue
with each one.
partners.
Oh,
So I would
this
say
was on top,
conservatively
Ambassador, of.
about, yeah,
Yes.
conservatively about 1,000 meetings during that year. But the one that we arranged here in the Philippines, in various places in the Philippines, including Cebu and Davao and so on. That's about 106. Of course, I was
Wow.
assisted by other agencies because
Mhm.
the other agencies are also chairing their own respective committees. like the DTI, for example, for the Economic Committee, the OST for Science and Technology, and so on. But still, the budget is centralized. So aside from chairing some of the meetings, I also had to attend to some administrative matters.
Matters,
So I would
yes.
say that personally, that was what made my involvement in the drafting of the ASEAN Charter difficult, no? Because
Yes.
administratively, I was also attending to other matters.
Other
In
matters,
effect,
yeah.
I was also multitasking. But when it
Yeah.
comes to the drafting of the ASEAN Charter, as I said, we were already given a framework by the Eminent Persons Group. And on top of that, we received guidance from the ASEAN leaders, also from the foreign ministers and other sectors like the economic sector and the socio-cultural sector, and also from civil society, various civil society groups, including the ASEAN Interparliamentary Organizations. Of course, during those 13 meetings of the HLTF, we met specifically with some of these interest groups. No, our seventh meeting was with the human rights group. Because there are 4 countries, ASEAN countries, that have human rights commission. So we met with them in Indonesia. But as you can see, the difficulty in drafting the charter is that for 40 years, we did not have one. So
Yes.
meaning, to say the least, we are an illegal organization for 40 years. Can you imagine we are receiving money from other countries, from other donor countries? Secretary General
Yes.
was representing us in some of these meetings and
Meetings.
administrative matters. So that is what is the first thing that the charter did to us. We became a legal
entity.
legal entity.
Yes.
And since we know that being a legal entity, somehow we are putting parameters, no, for all 10 ASEAN member countries on how we should deal with each other, no, how we will cooperate, how we will conduct.
How you will conduct, yes, your
operation.
affairs.
We thought that if that is to be done, therefore, a very fundamental universal value that should be there in the charter is the human rights mechanism. No? Unfortunately, in ASEAN, you should appreciate the fact that unlike the EU, we are not a homogeneous group.
Yes.
We are not a homogeneous group. Our levels of economic development vary from maybe now around $65,000 per capita for Singapore, Brunei, but less than $2,000 for other countries.
Other countries,
members,
yeah.
no? So, secondly, form of government.
Yes,
Form of government
actually.
vary from democracy to autocracy.
So, yes.
Monarchies,
Actually,
we have
that was
parliamentarians.
yes,
No?
that was actually mentioned, Ambassador, by one of our guests in the first episode. That it was really a struggle, or somehow that posed as a difficulty, because the states that are members of the ASEAN do not come from the same kind of government or also background.
Yes, that's right. And thirdly, you should also appreciate the fact that 9 out of 10 ASEAN member countries were colonized by big powers.
By big powers, yes.
And that for many of them, including us, if you consider the fact that we got independence from the US only in 1946,
Yes.
different from the one that we got from Spain. No? So that was
Yes.
relatively new. But look at Singapore. they became independent only in 1965.
Oh
And
yes,
ASEAN was born
more
in
recently,
1967.
yes, more recently than other than the Philippines or
That's
other
right.
countries. Yeah.
So what I'm saying is many of the ASEAN member countries are still finding their place under the sun. No,
Mm.
so,
Okay.
so they
Yes.
don't know what shape of or what form of government they should adopt and so on. Again, going back to Singapore, it was a difficult time for them because for a time they were part of Malaysia, but
Yes.
they they seceded. No? So there were challenges on how to relate with neighbors, especially if your neighbor is adjacent.
To
Unlike the
you,
Philippines, we
and
have
was
different
part of
from
you, was part of you, and
yes,
then you want to be identified as some state different from that.
yes,
Yes.
that's right. So, having said that, it is not surprising, therefore, that
Mm.
when it came to the discussion on the provision of the human rights
Mhm.
mechanism, ASEAN or the HLTF representatives were divided. No,
Mm.
uh,
Mhm.
the strong advocates of a human rights mechanism really are Indonesia and Thailand. No,
Mm.
uh, you're making a charter. This is a legal document. You will
Mhm.
have to be bound by.
Bound, yes. Actually, I was going to ask you, Ambassador, about that
Uh, that's right. And
because
then
after
what
making
kind?
this charter,
Yes,
everyone has to be bound by that. Yeah.
that's right. And then what kind of animal are we going to come up with? Is
Mhm.
it an animal that will be, or is it a body that will start accusing the members of human rights
Yes, yes,
violations and
yes.
so on? They
Or
would not
start
want that.
prosecuting, yes,
Yes,
or
they would not want
condemn,
that
yes.
thing. So I hope you can appreciate where these CLMV countries are coming from.
Mm, mhm.
It's not
Yes.
that they do not want a human rights provision enshrined in the charter.
Mhm.
What they are after really is that they be given a breathing space, no? Because they
Mm,
are new countries emerged from long years of colonization. They're
mhm,
still finding the most appropriate form of government that will suit them.
mhm,
And then to add to the challenges of these countries, no, some of the ASEAN member countries have a lot of very strong secessionist groups that seek to divide
yes, yes.
their country,
Their
and
country, yeah.
so a lot of challenges.
I
So
actually
they thought,
appreciate, Ambassador, that you mentioned that because we're seeing now the context of how it was being built. You're trying
mm,
to balance, well, at least also the Philippines at that time, it was trying to balance itself, being the middle ground, but at the same time wanting to have a community and in the charter that could advocate for human rights, but at the same time respecting other countries that just got its independence, trying to form its identity, and
yeah,
also trying to work its way out on how it will be in terms of
uh,
policies in its government. In because I understand also that in these countries at that time they were also having civil wars or internal conflicts because of
that's right.
certain groups that were going against the
Right.
government. Yeah.
Yes. So because of that, no, yung naging decision, yung initial draft that was adopted by HLTF, and I will read it to you. Eh, you will note that it's quite hilaw
Mm.
and mahiyaw.
Raw, a little raw at that
It's
time. Yes.
raw. It's not. A lot of things have to be desired. No,
Mm-hmm.
so the meeting adopted on an ad referendum basis. No, this is to
Mm.
take care of the concerns of other countries that they are not prepared yet. They
Mm.
adopted the following text on an ad referendum basis. ASEAN shall or may establish an ASEAN human rights body at a time acceptable to all ASEAN member states to promote and protect human rights and fundamental freedoms of the of the people of ASEAN.
Mm.
So that was what they agreed on the evening of July 26. No?
Mm.
And then when they one day the night before they met with the ministers, foreign
Mhm.
ministers, Ambassador Manalo called a meeting again. You know? Because as I said, this was on at the referendum basis. No? So during those 2 days, the members of HLTF consulted their capitals.
Mhm.
So on the evening of the 28th, Ambassador Manalo as chair called a meeting. And then he applied some, well, this is her negotiating tactic. No?
Mhm.
Because, in diplomacy, in negotiations, there are
Yes.
different tactics. Like, for
Ways.
example,
Yes.
before
Of.
this, no, the seventh meeting, which was held in Bali, the choice of Bali was intentional.
So
Intentional
that
on the part of
people
the
will
chair.
be relaxed, or.
Relax. They would be calm, peaceful, because the
Mm.
environment is conducive to that kind of
Mm.
discussion. No?
Yes. Yes.
That is the strategy of the Indonesian HLTF. Now,
That's very nice, Ambassador. I
yeah.
mean.
Now, when it came to the Philippines, because there was no consensus on what I have just read, no,
Yes.
there was
Yes.
no consensus. So the style of Mrs. Manalo was that uh, it was past. We just had dinner then. No,
Mhm.
so the delegations started assembling, and then Mrs. Manalo began. I would say she 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 threw a tantrum to
Oh.
begin with. She started shouting at everyone.
Mhm.
She told everyone to get out of the room
Mhm.
except for the HLTF members, because
Mm.
she would want a conducive a heart-to-heart discussion with the HLTF
So that
members.
everybody can concentrate and focus on it and have
Yes,
something. I mean, she would want to get things done already. So everyone needs to focus and have that kind of attitude of
that's right.
of having a more focused, or at least a goal in mind.
That's one. But the other reason there is because
Mm-hmm.
she wanted to avoid the accusation, the concerns of other delegations that
Mm.
the reason why they do not want to
That
meet in
may
the Philippines
hinder.
is because the media is very intrusive. Now,
Mm.
if if you have such kind of media and they would kumbaga yan, parang marites, but they can delete that later. Uh, if you have such kind of media and they are not able to get anything from the delegates, they will make up their own stories. No, so
Mm-hmm.
Ambassador Manalo thought that maybe the best way to allay their concerns is that they will have this meeting all by themselves. Now, during that
Mm.
meeting, when there were when there was just the 10 of them, of course, I was not in the room. Uh, when there was just the 10 of them, Ambassador Manalo confessed to the group that the Philippine Foreign Minister did not accept the
Oh,
the draft of
the draft,
ad referendum
yes.
basis. The very least that the Philippines wanted was to establish a human rights commission,
Mm-hmm.
and that countries would participate when they were ready to do so. So that
Mm.
was what Ambassador Manalo put forward. And then Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore also mentioned that their foreign ministers did not accept the ad referendum formulation. So they got stuck again. No, they went back to the first base. On
Yes, to
where
the
they were.
first, yes.
There were a lot of heated discussions. Mind you, this was past 12 midnight already. They have to come up with something because
Yes, of
they
course.
will have to present a text, an agreed text to the foreign minister. No? Now, you know who saved the day or who saved the night? It
Who,
was the ASEAN
Ambassador?
Secretary. It was the ASEAN Secretary General, Ong Keng Yong.
Oh.
Ong Keng
Mm-hmm.
Yong at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so he still took the first draft of the
Article
HLTF
14.
referring to
Mm-hmm.
the human rights body, and
Mm-hmm.
this is what he suggested, no? And I will read it to you.
Mm-hmm.
In conformity with the purposes and principles of the ASEAN Charter relating to the promotion and protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms, ASEAN shall cooperate to establish
Mm.
an ASEAN human rights body. So that is loaded when you say ASEAN shall cooperate. So
Yes,
you
yes,
will already cover the concerns of the other countries that they are
yes.
not ready
Mm-hmm.
to have an ASEAN mechanism,
Body,
much
yes,
less
McKen.
the commission the Philippines would like to put in the charter. So eventually
But that
they,
was still a big step, Ambassador, for you to put and agree on that all the ASEAN members shall cooperate. That's still a big,
yeah,
that's still an achievement on the part of those who would really want
yeah,
to establish a mechanism compared to having nothing at all.
yeah, that's right. Because as you can see, y- in negotiations, you have to have give and take, Uh,
Yes, yes.
so eventually, when that was presented to the foreign ministers the following day, they were surprised. Very little discussion was done on
Mm.
that one. It was accepted even by the even by the CLMV countries, because for
Mhm.
them that gives them enough flexibility.
Flexibility, yeah.
So that is now what you will see, or what is enshrined in Article
Yes, written in Article 14, yes.
written in Article 14. But then,
Wow.
what? Of course, there's still an item hanging.
Mhm.
How about the terms of reference?
Yes.
Because originally they were thinking of having the HLTF draft the terms of reference of
Mhm.
this body, but there was not enough time, no material time
Mhm.
uh, for that one. So what happened was that they added a second paragraph to Article 14 when it comes to
That's
the
why.
terms of reference. Uh, that shall be determined by the ASEAN foreign ministers.
Mm.
Because 1 year, what can you do in 1 year?
Yes,
You know,
yes.
it's not only the human rights provision that they are tackling. Uh,
Yes.
a lot of other things. Uh, and besides, it's not only the ASEAN peoples or who are closely watching what the HLTF is doing,
Everybody is watching, or at least,
especially the dialogue partners. No, the
yes,
dialogue
yes,
partners are also watching what will come out of this charter drafting. No,
yes.
I'll give you an example. No, that the the other difficulty of the HLTF is that it's not only what they say in the negotiating room, no, meaning the national position. You
Mm-hmm.
also have to consider the fact that after the leaders have signed the charter, it will not go into effect. It has to be
Mm,
ratified by
yeah.
their respective
But
legislatures,
states, yes, legislatures.
respective states. So, what was the strategy of the Philippines? So, we included somebody from the Senate. Well,
To
not
go
the
with
senator,
you.
but
Yes.
we included a technical person
Mm-hmm.
from the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee, so that
Mm.
every time we meet and when we go back to the Philippines, she would just have to explain to the senators what
To the
transpired, what
legislators,
difficulty we
yes.
encountered,
Yes.
why we had to, negotiate
Mm-hmm.
uh, us to consider all different positions. But in the case of Indonesia, Indonesia was the second to the last, no, to submit their
Mm. Mm-hmm.
investigation. Before their parliament approved it, they had to conduct at least 200, 200 briefings. Briefings not only
Mm.
to the parliamentarians, but also to the media, to civil society, to all interest groups. No, that
To
was how
get
difficult it
everybody on board. Yeah.
was. Yeah. And in the case of the other countries were also in the process of reviewing their own national charters. So
Mm-hmm.
necessarily they will have to incorporate this.
To
So they were
conform to
ready
the
and
to Article
ready.
14.
So that those are the difficulties that the framers of this charter went through.
Mm.
But in the case of the Philippines, we had to cover our ground. We included
Yes.
in the Philippine delegation not only a
A
delegate
technical
or a
person.
representative from the Foreign Affairs Committee
Yes.
of the Senate, but we were the only delegation that included a
A yes.
non-governmental person, no,
Mm-hmm.
who came from the ASEAN human rights mechanism.
Ambassador, I guess I'll just boil down to my last question, if I may.
Sure.
Given that we have established the ASEAN Charter and we have included Article 14, 15 years later, what can you say about the Charter and how has it influenced the region? What do you
Well, I had to be pragmatic about it. No, there were a lot of
mhm.
criticisms on the charter. No, some sectors were disappointed that it did not go far enough, and so on.
Mhm.
And the others would have said that it went too far. So we really had to strike a balance on
Yes,
that one. But
yes.
anyway, we had a provision in the charter that providing for a review. No,
Mm.
we even suggested that it could even be reviewed every 5 years. But it has after 15 years,
Mm.
it has not been
Amended or
reviewed.
revised,
Amended.
yes, or reviewed.
But the
Mhm.
Philippines, together with Indonesia, are looking for opportunities to have it reviewed, no? So
Mhm.
that we can amend some provisions, no, controversial provisions like many are criticizing the decision-making process because
Mhm.
they're saying that that is what makes ASEAN to work uh, very slowly, no?
Mhm.
Because you cannot have a decision on agreement unless all 10
Agree.
agree to it, no?
Yes.
Uh,
Correct.
so up to now, the Philippines and Indonesia would like to have that one amended, no?
Reviewed.
But
Okay.
let me also say that in my present capacity as
Mhm.
the Philippine High Level
Representative.
representative to the post 2025 ASEAN Vision, we are also looking at the 10-year action, the current 10-year action plan of ASEAN, uh,
Mm.
meaning the 2015 to 2025 action plan. We are looking at the provisions, including provisions on human rights, and
Mm.
we are we with the end in view that we would like to see how our cooperation in pushing the ideals or the values of
Mm.
human rights in the region
Yeah.
could be achieved.
Achieve.
At this point in time, what we are looking at really is not only, well, this is not particular to human rights only, no? To the one on women, children, to migrant workers, and so on. You see the problem that we are encountering now in our work as HLTF, the post 2025 vision, is that when it comes to the implementation of
Mm.
the plans that we would want to
Of the.
adopt, say
Mhm.
on human right, on the rights of children, or the right of the marginalized sector during this pandemic.
Mhm.
ASEAN is composed of three pillars, but there is no provision or there is no mechanism now wherein these three pillars could interact to address a common issue like human
Mhm.
rights, as it applies to, say, the marginalized sector,
Yes.
the effect of the pandemic on the marginalized sector, on children, on women, and so on. Because at the moment, or the existing plan, the on human rights, they are either, or most of them are in the political security community sector.
Mm. Sector.
Some
Yeah.
of them are in the socio-cultural.
Mhm.
Migrant workers, they are in the economic sector, and so on. So we would like to see that after 2025, ASEAN would have a mechanism whereby these common issues could be commonly
Will be
addressed
addressed.
by the
Yes.
three
Yes.
pillars at the same time.
Yeah.
The challenge there is who will head this
Mm.
coordinating council, if you may. No?
Yeah.
But anyway, we have 3 years to look into that.
Yes. And we look forward also to have that vision realized eventually. I mean, 3 years is still it gives us enough time, gives everyone enough time to study it and see how it will
Yes,
work out
that's right.
eventually. Yeah.
Actually, well, personally, my main concern was that the existing 10-year plan that we have, 2015 to 2025, we have not factored in the pandemic. We did not realize that
Yes.
the pandemic could be quite disruptive. So I
Yes.
thought that,
Yes.
you know, one way to avoid the pandemic really is to start to look at how it started. And
Mm.
we know for a fact that it started from zoonotics, or from the
Mhm.
transfer of the virus from animals to human, because
Mhm.
we have encroached in the environment of the animals, especially the wild animals.
Mhm.
So I thought that maybe, aside from looking at human rights, we should also look
Mm.
at animal
And
rights.
yes, animal rights and other, yes, I mean it somehow everything's connected.
Yeah,
and then it shouldn't be
we should
just
not disturb them, you know.
confined. Yes, it
Yes, we
shouldn't
should not
just be
disturb them
confined to.
in their environment, because when
Mm.
you encroach in their environment, especially when you start collecting them and eating them or trading them, you
Mhm.
know, that's when things begin to. That's when
There's
the pandemics would start.
yes, or that strikes an imbalance.
Yeah.
Thank you
So
for
that's
that,
why we have
Ambassador.
for
That's a very
example,
nice insight.
you have we have programs on trafficking of women
Yes,
and children. I think we should also, and we have several
consider it.
provisions, no, or programs on trafficking of women and children. So why don't we have the same several plans and programs for trafficking in wildlife?
Wildlife, yes. That's a very nice
You
insight,
know,
Ambassador, that you have shared.
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
and also to empower the communities surrounding this
Mm,
the environment where this wildlife meet. And besides,
yes.
you know, the Philippines is hosting the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity, and they're looking
Mm,
very closely at this, natural habitat or the environment of these mostly endangered species. Yeah.
I see. Well,
I'll give
on
you a
that,
very concrete example.
okay,
pangolin.
sure, sure,
Pangolin.
Ambassador.
You find that
We
in
will look
Palawan.
forward to that. Yes, we will
Yeah.
look forward to that.
So we need to protect this wildlife.
Yes. And on that note, Ambassador, I'd like to thank you again for your time. We learned so many things from you. I'm actually very happy to have learned a lot of things, not just about the ASEAN Charter, but how everything has been integrated, or also the context of how everything has developed throughout the years, and the insight that you have just mentioned a while ago before we are about to end this podcast, how it shouldn't just be confined with human rights, but maybe it's high time also to involve animal rights or other the rights of other, I guess, the environment also, and how we should take care of it, because that's where once we disturb ecosystems or disrespect rights of other things that are living with us, then problems arise, and these things may, little by little have repercussions. And it's good that you have shared with us that very nice realization, so that our listeners could also ponder on that too. Maybe
Yeah.
before we end, do you have anything to say? Maybe your last message for our listeners tonight, Ambassador?
Well, my just a short one. As I said,
Mm-hmm.
the ASEAN is now going through an exercise of drafting plans and programs for the next
Mm-hmm.
10 years. I mean, after 2025. And if you have, especially the civil society groups, if you have any proposals on what plans and programs should be included in
Mm.
the successor plan,
Mm-hmm.
or between 2025 and so on, I would suggest that you submit your proposals
Mm-hmm.
to your respective foreign ministries, uh,
Mm.
because the delegates to the high level task force on the post 2025 ASEAN Vision are, are based in the respective foreign affairs ministries
Course.
of
Mhm.
ASEAN member countries.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that call, Ambassador. And as our high level representative for to the high level task force of ASEAN communities post 2025 vision, that's very empowering. And at the same time, for anybody who's listening to us right now, if he or she has an idea, then it would be great to have this um, given as a proposal to their respective foreign
Yes.
ministries. Well, that's all for today's episode for ASEAN Peoples Speak. Thank you all for listening, and thank you to Ambassador Luis Cruz or Ambassador Louis for joining us today. Well, join us again
Thank you.
next week for another episode for ASEAN People Speak. Make sure that you subscribe to the podcast on Spotify so you never miss an episode. Also, subscribe to our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube channel at WG ASEAN HRMEC and visit our website at ASEANHRMEC.org. Again, this has been your host, Regine Jessica Abuel for ASEAN People Speak. See you all and good night. Thank you.